John Mason Hodges is a conductor, lecturer, composer, and writer. He holds degrees in music from University of Maryland and Indiana University, and worked as a professional conductor from 1983 to 2009. He lectures on the subjects of aesthetics, classical education, and music, and writes for various publications on the arts. He held the position of Associate Professor of the Arts and Culture at Crichton, Long I, Crichton College, where he taught classes on worldview, history of music and visual arts, and readers' theater, directed theater productions, and was founding director of the Institute for the Arts and Cultural Apologetics. He is founder and director of the Center for Western Studies and serves as scholar in residence for the National Fellows Movement. Please join me in welcoming John Mason Hodges.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I've wanted to come here for a long time. I'm very pleased to finally see NSA from the inside. I don't know about you, but there are times in a person's life that are sort of life-changing, moments that rearrange your perspective, send you on a particular path. I had one of those moments many years ago. I was talking to a pastor friend of mine, and he said this sentence. He said, "John, it doesn't matter what style music we sing as long as the words are Christian." And I thought, what planet do you live on? How can you say such a thing as though there is no content to the music, not just to the words, but to the music? And so, ever since then, I have been on a tirade, really, to try and explain to people that music is a language and it speaks things. And you have to learn the language just like you have to learn Latin or French. But once you learn the language, you understand something about what's going on. You can make sense of the various dialects. You can see how it is that great composers made sense of the music and why they're considered great composers. You wonder sometimes when you hear a piece of music, you wonder, like I do, why didn't they just read the text instead of trying to sing it or compose something to it? Because the composition and the text are so foreign to each other that they don't make any sense. And I could give you examples, but I only have a few minutes. So what I want to do is play you a couple of examples of music from Mozart. I'm going to choose Mozart just out of the blue because he does such a great job with this. Mozart, as you know, is a tremendous composer. He died when he was 35 years old. And so when Mozart was my age, he'd been dead for 28 years or something. I mean, I'm doing the math right, I think. So he was a genius. He was an amazing genius. And one of the great things he did was write operas. He wrote a whole slew of operas. They come in slews, right? I think that's right. Gaggle of geese, slew of operas. Yeah, right. They are amazing. And the thing that he did, he revolutionized opera in one particular way, and that was that before Mozart, you basically had pieces of music for a singer to sing in the opera that could be interchanged with another character in the same circumstance. If you're singing a lament about your heart being broken, well, it could be this character, or it could be in a different opera with a different character and different circumstance, but he's still heartbroken or whatever, and he could sing the same music. Well, what Mozart did was he wrote music for the specific character that's singing at the time. And that means that for example, I'm going to give you, how many of you know the opera, The Marriage of Figaro? Super, as they say in France. Wonderful. I'm so glad you know this work. Well, if you know it, then you know that the music that the Countess sings is very different than the music that Susanna sings. And the two of them are friends. They can sing a duet. They do sing a duet, sull'aria, but they also can't sing the other person's music. It just isn't right. It doesn't sound like the Countess's music has a sort of lofty grandeur and humility to it, and Susanna's music is much more middle, lower class kind of music, is straightforward and more predictable and so on. Anyway, it goes with all the characters in Mozart's operas that they can't sing each other's music because it's so perfectly tailored. And from that point on in opera, you get an awful lot of composers, great composers, who pick that up and run with it. Well, if you know the opera, you know the first scene. It's a duet between Figaro and Susanna, and they're in, I got to set the sort of stage for it, no pun intended. The scene is you play the fantastic overture that you all know probably, and then once the overture's done, you hear the music for the first number going, and then the curtain rises and you see a bare bedroom. It has maybe a mirror and a chest of drawers and some draped furniture, but it's not clearly ready to be lived in. And you see a man on his hands and knees on the floor with a ruler, and he's measuring the floor. And on the other side of the room, you see a girl, who is trying on hats in the mirror. And she's looking at the hat, and she's thinking, oh, this is a great hat. And Figaro is simply saying numbers. He's saying 5, 10, 15. He's measuring something. We don't know what yet. And then she turns to him and she says, won't you look at this hat, my mio caro Figaro, my darling Figaro, won't you look at my hat? Isn't it a beautiful hat? And he, like so many of us guys, kind of blows her off. He says, yeah, right, it's a great hat. Let me keep counting here. I'm doing something, you know. And she kind of says, but look at it. And he goes, si, mio core. Yes, my love, it's my heart, it's beautiful. Yeah, he keeps going. And finally, you can hear her nag at him just a little bit in the music. She goes, nyeh, 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 like this. And finally, he turns and looks at her, and he says, yes, oh, you're right. It's such a beautiful hat. It's the perfect hat for you. And then you hear the music. She's got a tune that she's singing, I meant to say. She's got a tune she's singing about her hat. He's got a tune he's singing, if you call it a tune, it's kind of, what's the word? Broken up, you know, as he's measuring. Then they come together in this moment, and you can hear it in the music. I'm going to point it out as we listen to it. And they sing in harmony. And they get closer. If you've got a good stage manager, stage director, they know to use this little spot in the music to bring them closer together, and then closer together, and then closer together. And then they sing together in harmony, and they're all on the same page. So what you've got is a scene where the music teaches you that they are of two different minds when the thing starts, and then they come together and they sing in harmony. They become one mind. And this is very important. Mozart knew this very well because if you know the plot of the Marriage of Figaro, it's very complicated. I'm not going to try and unpack it all here. But it's all about the two of these people getting married. They are both servants. They're not aristocrats. They're servants. And they're going to get married, and they are in love with each other. But each of them is going to be tested by kind of jealousy about the other one. The Count, it turns out, has designs on Susanna. And he, of course, isn't very happy about that. She doesn't want that either, but he sort of encroaches on her. He chases all the women in the castle anyway. But Susanna in particular. And then later on, there's another woman for Figaro that appears out of nowhere and claims that you were engaged to me and you're supposed to marry me. You can't marry her, you got to marry me. And that gets all worked out too. But in each of those cases, the other one gets a little green with jealousy. And so it's important in this opening number to see that in the music, Mozart is telling you, don't worry about a thing. Everything's going to work out in the end. These two are meant to be together. They sing in harmony with each other. And any question about that is going to be fixed before the end of the play. Don't worry, all's well. And it happens in the music. So let me play it for you. I'll walk it through with you. And then afterward, I want to say a word or two more about how brilliant that music really is. Can we play the Figaro example? So right after the overture, you hear this. By the way, this is a live performance, so you'll hear actors walking around on the stage and everything. Hear them tromping around. So the curtain is going up on it. And there you see the room. And Figaro says, Cinque, 5, 10, 20, you know from Starbucks. 30, 36. It'll be just right. And she says, oh, what a beautiful hat. It's the perfect hat for me. And he goes, guardo po mio caro Figaro. Look at me. Look. Isn't this a lovely hat? When he's 37 or something. He says it'll just fit. And she goes, and he says, più bello. It's the perfect hat for you. Yeah, right, fine, no sweat. And she says, but look at it. He goes, but look at it. Then she says, and he looks. Can you hear them? They come together. Is that marvelous? They sing, you're gonna be the most beautiful bride. Susanna è la stessa Sophie. And then a little coda. Stessa Sophie. And they kiss each other, and all is well with the world. Isn't that a marvelous opening? Now, hold on just a second. Let me listen to this next little bit, I guess. Just keep going right from here. This is a recitativo, recitative, where they're talking to each other. And she says, what are you doing? That's good. It passed what I was about to say. But what he says is, she says, what are you doing anyway? And he says, I'm measuring. And she says, for what? I'm measuring for the bed, to see if the bed is going to fit into this room. The bed? Yeah, this is going to be our bedroom when we get married. This is where we'll live in the castle. And she says, why here? And he says, well, because it's so close to the Count. I'm his servant. I'm right down the hall from him. He can call me. He can ring his bell. I can be there in a flash. See, that's really good. And Susanna says, whoa, you don't understand. He's given you this room for a reason. He says, what kind of reason could there be? She says, he's going to ring that little bell, you see, and he's going to send you on an errand miles away. And when he does, then he's going to come in here and accost me. He's going to come after me. And of course, Figaro is furious. That's no. And he says to her, Susanna, pian, softer. Don't say those things out loud. People will hear you, you know. But that's what she says. And you see right off the bat, the second thing, that is that both of these people are servants, he to the Count and she to the Countess. But of the two of them, she's the smarter one. Now, he's smart, don't get me wrong. He turns out to be pretty sharp, but she's the one with the real schemes and recognizes the problems and all that stuff, and this is an example of that. So she says, no, you see, it's not like you think. So later on, he sings a great aria, Se vuol ballare, signor Contino. If you want to dance, Count, I'm going to call the tune. That's what he says. You remember the tune? Se vuol ballare, signor Contino. It's a wonderful moment, and it's a scary moment for the aristocrats. And there's a whole history behind this play, because this was just before the time of the French Revolution. And for servants to rise up against their masters was a really revolutionary idea. And so, and for a while, the play that this was based on was banned in Vienna, in Austria, because they didn't like the idea that the servant was going to tell the master what to do, you see. But it becomes a very popular play, especially after the Revolution. Anyway, this is what I want to tell you about the music, though. All that is background in order to say this about the music. Mozart is able to get across to us that notion that all is well with this couple by the music. There's no mention of it in the text, but it's in the music, and it's there on purpose. If you look for it, you'll see it. Well, also, Mozart had this fantastic ability to grasp kind of human nature. And if you think about it, the two of them are kind of being men and women right off the bat. What's she doing? She's thinking about the wedding. She's thinking about the hat she's going to wear in the wedding, and the dress, and how beautiful a bride she's going to be, right? What's he thinking about? He's thinking about the bed. Will the bed fit in here? He's thinking about the honeymoon. That's what he's thinking about. So that's another kind of fun, just a witty capability of a composer to write in such a way as to get those kinds of things across right off the bat. But, as you might have noticed, this has text. What about music that has no text at all? Well, I want to play you a piece of music that's another Mozart work, and I like doing these together because I think the very nature of his opera composing spills over into his instrumental work. In this case, this is a horn concerto. Mozart wrote 4 horn concertos. A concerto is a 3-movement work, fast, slow, fast, and he wrote 4. Actually, he wrote 5 of them, but the 5th one's never played. But there is a 5th one in E major that you all now you know. You can pull that out at parties. Did you know? But this is the last movement, the 3rd movement of the 2nd French horn concerto. Okay. All right. Well, what you need to do you all know about what a rondo is? How many of you know what a rondo is? Good, a few of you do. Okay, excellent. A rondo is a kind of musical form that has segments that are A, B, A, C, A, D, sometimes A. If you think of that, A, B, A, C, A, D, A. And if you can hear that, the A material comes back again and again and again. That's why they say it's rounded, it's rondo. The beginning and the end are an A, and then they're contrasting sections, and then the middles are 2 A's, and then more contrasting sections, and then right in the center of it is another A. No, sorry, it's C there. C then. So A, B, A, C, A, D, A. You follow? Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to play it for you once to just show you the form, and then I want to play it for you. It's only 5 minutes long, so I think we can hear it twice in the time we've got. Okay, let's hear it first. So there's your A theme, and it's repeated by the orchestra. So A is this combination of those 2 themes. B. Then they have a little conversation. Little transition, modulation, and then we get the C part. Transition back, letter A. And if it's a real A, then the orchestra plays too, right? So they do. And then back to A. A little different there. Then the coda, which is just tail, ending. And that's all there is to it. Isn't that delightful? It's a lovely little piece. Okay, a few things about it. First of all, let's wait. The French horn comes from hunting horns. And in the 18th century, people did a lot of hunting. So to hear a French horn play has a sort of memory of fox hunting or hunting animals, whatever. Tally-ho, that kind of thing, right? Okay, well, Mozart knew that very well, and they rode horses back then. So he wrote this in 6/8 time to be played at the tempo of a gallop. Can you hear it? That's what is that. It's a little reference to horseback riding. So that's there right off the bat. Second thing is, Mozart was a bit of a comedian and liked to play tricks on people. He wrote this piece for a fellow called Leutgeb. His last name was Leutgeb. And Mozart thought Leutgeb was a bit of an idiot. And so, I've seen the score. The first page of it is in black ink. When you open it up to the second page, it's in like green ink or something, blue ink, and just to throw him off. And then he wrote little notes in the margin to the French horn player. He says, just see if you can play this, you horse's rear. That's what he said to him. And what he's referring to is what they call a 2-octave arpeggio that he does. If it's in the B section, he plays bum 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 ba. That, but really fast. And he's written this little note. Just see if you can pull this off, you horse's rear. That's what he called it. Okay, well that's the B section. In the C section, this is where it really gets funny. Mozart was intending this to be funny, you understand. He changes to the minor key, to the relative minor key. Do you all know Hamlet? You all know Hamlet? Do you know who Polonius is? Right? Polonius is the guy who says, neither a borrower nor a lender be, and so on. He's always giving advice and talking too long, and he's a bit of a pompous guy. Well, some say he gets his just desserts by being run through by Hamlet later on, but never mind. I'll leave that to the critics. No, but he he's always blathering on and on and on. Well, I think Mozart wrote, because you know his operas and you know that he tunes these melodies to the character of the person. He is writing a melody that is very kind of pompous and self-important in this C section. It goes like that. And it always sounds to me like, if you go out tonight, you had better take your umbrella, you know. Okay, Dad, you know, Grandpa, thank you. There might be wolves out there in the forest, you know, or something. Okay, so that's what he's doing. Now, you have to understand, too, the geography of a concert like this. The conductor would be, if you're the audience, the conductor's with his back to you, like this, right? He's conducting. The orchestra is all out here, the strings and everybody here, and winds in the back. And the horn player will be next to the conductor, facing you. So the orchestra is behind him, right? Okay. Well, when he starts playing this, I want you to listen when we go back to it. He has the string players, you know, the horn player has to take a breath. Right? He's got to get a breath in there. Okay, well, in that breath, listen for what the strings are playing. They're playing what you call a grace note very quickly. They're going da-dum, 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 like that. Dum, 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 dum. And it sounds like giggling. So he goes, when you go out tonight, you had better forget your something or other. And they go, dude, da-dee-da-da-da-dee-da, very important stuff. And then really, it's really funny. It's intended to be funny. So when they get to the end of that section, the orchestra goes, nah, and they go back to playing A again. They like that, okay. Then something fun happens. Even in the most silly kind of a piece, lighthearted, silly piece, Mozart can give you a melody that is exquisite. And that's what he does in the D section. Compare the pompous sort of C section to what happens in the D section. It goes that kind of thing. Wow. That's like, you know, Romeo looking at Juliet at the balcony, you know. That's this kind of thing. It's very beautiful. Graceful. I can't think of a better word than graceful. That's what it is. And you'll notice when you get out of the A section, before you start D, the horn player breaks in before the orchestra can finish. Do you remember how the tune goes? And that da-da-da-da is what he jumps in on. So it goes, and the orchestra takes notice. They've been laughing at him, you know. But they take notice of that tune, and they say, hey, that one's pretty good. And they say, we better play that one too. And they do. And it's beautiful. And then you hear a little bit of hoof beats, and you get the only time, really, that the horn offers you anything like a hunting call. Listen, I'll point it out as it goes by, but toward the end of the D section. But then we get to the A section finally, and everybody who knows rondos, you knows the A section is coming back. So the horn, now you've heard the tune, what, twice, 4, 6 times, and now, because each time it's 2, right? And then now you're going to hear it again, and now you're kind of complacent about it. Oh yeah, I've heard this before, I know this tune. So he goes, you still with me? And And then, after that little joke, that's a joke for the audience to giggle at, like you just did. Just making sure you're still listening, still with me. Now, how many of you ride horses? Oh, right. What happens at the end of the ride when the horse sees the barn? What happens? He speeds up, doesn't he? Oh, the barn, food, rest, get this lug off my back, all of that, Right. So what does Mozart do? In the Coda, at the end of that last A, he says, and then he goes, it's the horse going to the barn. That's what it is. And everybody knew that when they heard it, and everybody laughed. It's the kind of piece that you need to listen to twice. So I'll play it again, and then we'll quit. Can you play it for us once more? Thank you for handling this. The orchestra says, okay, we'll play that. So it's like two personalities, the soloist and the orchestra. And then he says, and here's the 2-octave arpeggio, listen. Then they had converse. That's right. But do you remember this? Yeah, we do. Little lip trill there for all you brass players. A. The orchestra says, okay. Transition to C. Hear him? Really high. Who knows what there will be? It might be you'd get some mud on your boots. And they'll go, get out. Letter A. Now watch what happens at the end of the orchestra's part. And he jumps in. Oh, it's wonderful. And they say, I like that one. No laughing going on now. That's the horseback gallop. Little double tonguing there. And here's the little bit of horn call. Hey, oh good, we're going home now. Then, one more chance for the horn, and then the orchestra. And that's the piece. Speaks volumes, doesn't it? Well, thanks for your attention. I want to leave you a few minutes for questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's good to have you here. John and I are, we're about once a year friends for the last, 5 years or so, something like that. We met down in Louisiana at, I go down and do music camp at the school down there with Mr. Ritchie. Many of you know him. And he started bringing Mr. Hodges in to do some talks at the Bach lectures, which are always enjoyable. And anyway, it's been a good friendship, and
We've enjoyed each other.
glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
So that was all fun and all that, but why should we really care? Right? So it's entertaining, and that's nice for a diversion, but it's not really serious like most school subjects that people at university colleges like us should really know about, right?
College students don't need this.
Right.
Yeah. Whatever. Can you hear me all right?
Here you can.
Oh, that's okay. College students don't really need music. They just. Oh, thanks. Thank you. Now I said college students don't. I'm too sophisticated for that sort of stuff. No, to tell you the truth, I'm speaking tonight and tomorrow morning about aesthetics, and I'm talking about why it's important, especially for Christians, to regain a Christian understanding of aesthetics. For the very, I could go into it now, but it'll take a while. But so come to the lecture, come to the lectures. But the short answer, I guess, is God speaks to us in metaphors. If you think about it for a minute, in the revelation of God, you have the only ways that he can get across to finite creatures like us anything about his infinity is to use ideas that we're already acquainted with a little. So he calls himself a king, for example, or he calls himself a father, or he calls himself a shepherd, the good shepherd. He calls himself sometimes inanimate things like vines and bread and way and so on. I'm the way, he says. I'm the door. So why does he do that? Because in his parables and in his metaphoric references, we need to be able to unpack those things and see with a sort of baptized imagination what he's trying to say. That's the revelation of God to us. And he chides us occasionally. Go back and read the sower parable in Mark 4, and you'll see that he kind of, when they don't understand the sower parable right off the bat, he chides them a little bit for not getting it. He says, how are you going to understand any of the stuff that I'm talking about if you don't get this idea? And then he unpacks the parable and tells you what the metaphors mean. Still, they're metaphors, though. It's still the seed is the word of God, if you see what I mean, and so on. So all I'm trying to say is that we need to exercise our gift of imagination in a baptized way, a baptized imagination, an imagination that's turned over back to God to let him speak to us in the way that he wants to speak to us. Well, music is one of the greatest ways that I think he speaks, not only in the words that we sing, but in the music itself. It opens our eyes through our imaginations to things that we haven't thought of before. And so I think this is really squeezing together about half an hour's worth of lecture tonight. So come hear it tonight, and you'll make the links better than I've just done.
Well, I got other things I'd like to ask you, but they may want to ask, so I'm just going to turn it over right away if there's questions, and if not, I'll pepper you with some other ideas. Any questions for him about his talk or other things?
I'm personally convinced, of course, from your presentation that music, even without words, has meaning. But what would you say to somebody that says, well, Mr. Hodges, you're just quite good at kind of drawing out, well, I guess it wouldn't be drawing it, about kind of overlaying your own ideas onto this onto this music, but it wasn't actually embedded in the music. You're actually not drawing it out, doing a little bit of eisegesis rather than exegesis. How would you respond to that claim?
Yeah, that's a great question. The answer comes in this thing I'm trying to talk about tonight, which is that we don't need to embrace the world's notion of what beauty is. We are assuming, since the Enlightenment especially, that beauty is a matter of personal preference. That it's all subjective, in other words. And that means that anybody who does any of the kind of interpretation that I just did is just bringing to you his own personal interpretation, and it doesn't necessarily carry any weight. But what I want to do is get back to an objective understanding of aesthetics. And that means to study the object itself, not just how I feel when I come in contact with it. And when you do that, you find that those little grace notes are in the music. And that the French horn does come from the hunting horn, you see. And all of these little things that I've been talking about are actually part and parcel of the thing that was created, the object that we're talking about. So we can all debate them. I'm not saying that my interpretation is the only one. I'm not going to the other end of the spectrum. I'm just saying that I think what we need to be doing is studying what the music actually says, what it really does. What's the melody like, the harmony like, the order of the thing, the timbres that he chooses, the different instruments and the voices and so on. All those things are the tools that a composer uses to convey his meaning. And if we learn something about all those tools and we can then evaluate the piece on its own merits, then we can build an interpretation on that, not unlike what we do with good Bible study. You don't want to read a scripture and then eisegete the thing and come up with your own interpretation. You want to see it in context with everything else that's going on and talk to your theologian betters and read a lot about it and pray a lot about it. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into really taking a scripture and making sense of it. But all I'm asking is that we try and take some of that work and apply it to artworks as well, because the stuff is there. There is something there. What's he trying to say our interpretation should be based purely on the observations that we make about the actual piece.
Would you say, so that question that we get so much, or your first thing was about your changing moment in life with the pastor who said, form doesn't matter, just content, right? Would you agree that the reason for that is because when we study Scripture, we study it, theologians study it, and they understand the stuff of it, and they have the tools. A literary person does the same. A mathematician does the same. Magister does the same with Latin. He understands the language so that he can pull stuff out of it, but the majority of people in the land now are completely musically illiterate, and so there's absolutely no ability to actually deal with the text itself, with the stuff itself, so the only thing we can interact with is how I feel about it or whether I like or dislike it, which leads to even very orthodox evangelical Christians dismissing music as having any essence or seriousness about it, and so we can do whatever we want. So literacy really is, which he didn't talk about, right? He was able to talk about it because he's literate with the music, but he didn't get into the harmonic analysis, the phrase analysis, all the stuff that allows you to say something about it.
That's right. So as I'm sympathetic with the argument that eisegesis is possible. That's why I say a baptized imagination and not just imagine anything you want, because that's no good. But in order to know this piece, you have to know something about other works that he's written. I tried to tie the character of the French horn melodies into the information I tried to give about the opera, because they're similar, and it's the same composer. But then you also want to see what it is that composers before him did, and compare those, and so on. So it's just like studying anything. You have to see it in context, and then a truth will come out of it. Truth comes out of it. Now we can still debate it, mind you. None of us is perfect, and we do that with even theology. We debate it, don't we? So, but I'm just calling people to treat the arts in the same way that we treat truth. That is beauty, the way we treat truth. Anybody else?
Thank you so much for your talk. So I was wondering, a lot of NSA students, a lot of us here, we do choir, we really enjoy music, but we don't have as much extensive, studies in that unless we choose to go into music. So how would you suggest kind of going about learning or starting to, go research some of these things that are maybe really interesting and we really enjoy this music, but we're not going to go major in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just maybe how you would recommend us looking into that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a good question. My hope is that we have a lot of people who are interested enough in music to want to learn something about it, even if they don't go into it professionally. But we do that with other subjects, don't we? I mean, I can't think of one right off the top of my head. I used to scuba dive, and so I got into sort of oceanography. Well, I'm nothing like an oceanographer, but I learned about fish and their habits and, you know, a lot of things because I loved it. And so I think, you know the word amateur? Do you know what the root of amateur is? What? Lover, exactly. Amor, right? Amor. Well, an amateur is somebody who does it just because he loves it. Don't you want to be like that? You know, find something that you love and dive into it. I would suggest that you get together in somebody's home or somebody's dorm room or wherever and play some music and talk about it. Just like you might read a novel and talk about it, or read a book and talk about a poem and talk about it. Listen to the music and ask questions, and you don't have to have all the answers, just ask the questions. It might drive you to look up a couple of things, and then you'll learn more about it. The more you learn about it, the more you love it, and the more you love it, the more you want to do more of it. And that's how cultures go. That's how culture works. But because of the fact that you're interested on the front end and you could sort of build a little community that deals with it, you might go far and never have to be a professional.
Yeah. I guess we're at about time, so I'll get in trouble if I don't cut it off. So we thank Mr. Hodges for being here. Hopefully you can catch some of his talks. If not, they'll probably be posted. You can see them afterwards if you're not able to make it with your schedule. But you know, look into him a little bit. I really get Mr. Hodges because he's a musician, a conductor, but that's not what he does anymore. Vocationally, is running a gap year college program where he's dealing with arts and literature and all sorts of stuff and doing tours to Europe. He's an NSA music guy, unlike me. I don't have all that depth that he has. No. But he's also in the process of writing a musical to go to Broadway, and I can't tell you all about that now, but it's not just like write something and hope. It's amazing, the whole journey. So you might get a chance to ask him that this weekend or other things too. So anyway, let's thank him, and then we'll close with singing 134.